Welcome back to our channel. Rare penny errors, copper variations, and collectible dates are out there. Like and subscribe to see if your Lincoln cent is a jackpot coin. In the early months of 1982, the United States Mint found itself at a crossroads. Copper prices were climbing fast, and the cost of producing the humble 1-cent coin had risen alarmingly. For decades, the penny had been minted with a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc, but by the dawn of the 1980s, that formula was no longer sustainable. Every cent struck in copper was costing more than its face value, a paradox that couldn't continue. Behind closed doors, the U.S. Mint deliberated, tested, and prepared to shift toward a more cost-effective alternative, zinc-based cents with a thin copper plating. This transition wasn't dramatic. There were no grand announcements. No ceremonial last strikes. Instead, in 1982, the Mint quietly produced pennies using both compositions throughout the year. As if that wasn't enough, the Mint also began experimenting with different font styles for the date and design features, leading to 7 distinct varieties of 1982 Lincoln cents: large date copper, small date copper, large date zinc, small date zinc, and a few rare hybrids that blurred lines further. It was a turbulent, in-between year for the penny, and somewhere in that hazy transition emerged a coin that would later astonish collectors, a mistake so subtle, so unlikely, that it defied normal detection. In a modest suburb of Ohio, a retired machinist named Gerald Price spent most of his weekends at garage sales, estate auctions, and flea markets. He wasn't looking for treasure, at least, not in the traditional sense. Coins were his passion, something he'd inherited from his father, who had taught him to look closer, to never take a common coin at face value. One Saturday afternoon, while thumbing through a shoebox filled with dusty change at a yard sale, he came across a handful of Lincoln cents, mostly 1970s and 1980s dates. There was nothing remarkable at first glance, until one 1982 penny caught his eye. It was the way the numerals curved, the subtle slant of the 2, the compact shape of the 8. Something felt smaller. He flipped it between his fingers and noticed the color too. It had a distinct red-brown hue, unmistakably copper, not the duller, grayish tint of zinc-based cents. But here was the twist: the weight. Years of experience told him that a copper cent should weigh about 3.11 grams, while the new zinc version came in at just 2.5 grams. He didn't have his scale on hand, but he knew how a copper coin felt in his palm. And this one? It didn't feel right. Later that evening, under his desk lamp with the digital scale ready, Gerald placed the penny down. The numbers blinked before settling at 3.11 grams. A copper cent. No surprise there. But then he looked again at the date, small and tight. That was the real anomaly. According to every collector's guide and every known variety, a 1982 small date cent from the Philadelphia Mint should have been struck on a zinc planchet, not copper. But here it was. A small date, copper cent. A combination that wasn't supposed to exist. The disbelief set in slowly. He checked it again. Then again. He compared it to other small date zinc cents. The size of the date was identical. He tested the coin for magnetism, none. He examined the rim, the fields, the strike. Everything about the coin pointed to a standard 1982 penny, except that it wasn't. This was an outlier. A misstep by the Mint in a year already filled with changes. He reached out to an expert through a coin forum, sharing photos, weight details, and date comparisons. The responses came fast, first skeptical, then curious, then stunned. The small date copper combination was known among elite circles, but only a handful had ever surfaced, less than 20 verified. Each one sparked debate, speculation, and excitement. How had this pairing happened? The likely explanation was that a leftover copper planchet, perhaps one intended for early 1982 or even late 1981, had been mistakenly fed into the press when the small date dies were already installed. A rare overlap of old metal and new design. Word spread quietly at first. A few major collectors reached out privately, offering to examine the coin. Gerald decided to submit it to a professional grading service. The wait felt endless. Weeks passed. When the slab finally arrived, it read, 1982 small date Lincoln cent, copper planchet, MS63RB, verified transitional error. It was real. Certified. The rarity confirmed, offers began pouring in. First $15,000. Then $18,000. A dealer at a Chicago show offered $12,000 cash on the spot, noting he'd only ever seen two others in person. But Gerald wasn't ready to let go. This coin wasn't just rare, it was history. A tangible echo of a moment when the U.S. Mint was caught between tradition and economy, and somewhere along the way, made a silent mistake. Other collectors started digging. Some went through hoards of 1982 cents, weighing each one. A few more small-date copper specimens emerged, each treated with the same reverence as a lost artifact. One sold at auction for $18,000. Another fetched over $24,000 in a private sale. But it wasn't just the rarity that drove the value, it was the complexity. The 1982 penny became a maze, a puzzle, a year of contradictions. And the small-date copper variant became the ultimate prize. Then came a twist that no one expected. At a coin convention in Las Vegas, a collector presented a raw 1982 cent to a table of dealers, claiming it was a small-date copper. The dealers scoffed, until they held it, weighed it, examined the diagnostics. Not only was it copper and small date, it also bore faint doubling on the date, barely visible without magnification. This wasn't just a transitional error, it had a second layer of anomaly. It was submitted, graded, and authenticated as one of the finest known examples. It later sold for a jaw-dropping $48,000. That sale opened floodgates. Collectors who had once ignored 1982 pennies started checking again. Every coin show, every estate sale, every roll searcher became a potential discoverer of a $50,000 coin hiding in plain sight. The market adjusted rapidly. By 2021, a well-preserved 1982 small-date copper cent, properly authenticated, commanded anywhere from $28,000 to $65,000 depending on grade and appeal, but the record wouldn't stop there. In 2024, a pristine specimen, graded MS67 red, went to auction. It had full luster, sharp strike, and the unmistakable glow of freshly minted copper. The bidding war was intense, lasting over 20 minutes, with phone lines buzzing and online bids crashing the system. When the gavel fell, the final price was a staggering $125,000. The audience gasped. The coin had entered a new echelon. No longer a curiosity, it was a legend, and still, Gerald kept his. Slabbed, secured, insured, but not forgotten. He looked at it often, not for the value, but for the reminder of that Saturday morning. The quiet glance. The gut feeling. The weight in his palm that told him something was different. He didn't need the auction. He had the story. A story that started with a penny and ended with a revelation. In the dawn of the new millennium, the year 2000 ushered in a sense of promise, technological advancement, and national pride. For the United States Mint, it was business as usual. Billions of coins were scheduled to be struck, from quarters celebrating statehood to the ever-present Lincoln 1-cent penny. The Lincoln cent, still bearing the same profile designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, had long faded into the background of everyday life, passed through hands, dropped into vending machines, stashed in jars and glove compartments. It was a workhorse of American currency, familiar and often overlooked. But buried within the staggering number of pennies minted that year, a handful bore a secret, a mistake that would take years to uncover and even longer to believe. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 5.5 billion pennies in 2000. Among such a massive output, it's easy to see how small anomalies could slip through unnoticed. Machines operated around the clock, pressing planchets at incredible speeds, their dies wearing down from constant use. And while quality control was stringent, no system was perfect. Somewhere in the noise of daily operations, a series of errors slipped quietly past inspection. Not dramatic blunders visible at a glance, but subtle distortions, deceptively minute flaws that would only be noticed by someone looking closely enough. Miles away, in a quiet corner of Nevada, a young collector named Devin Rhodes began cataloging his childhood coin collection. A decade had passed since he last looked at the coins, which had sat untouched in a wooden box carved by his grandfather. Most of the pennies were from the 1970s and 1980s, and while some showed signs of age and tarnish, a few shone bright with the sheen of newer mints. One 2000-dated penny caught his attention, not because of any particular brilliance, but because something about its design seemed off. He rotated the coin under his desk lamp. Lincoln's profile was crisp, the strike firm. But the letters "In God We Trust" appeared closer to the rim than usual. The "Liberty" inscription was faint, almost ghosted, as if the die had skipped a beat. And beneath the date, there was no mint mark, not unusual for Philadelphia coins, but the spacing of the numerals felt too tight. It wasn't glaring. It was almost imperceptible. Yet his instincts stirred. He reached for his scale and caliper. The weight measured 2.5 grams, exactly as expected for a zinc-based penny with copper plating. The diameter was spot on. Still, something nagged at him. He flipped the coin over to inspect the reverse. The Lincoln Memorial stood centered, yet a strange doubling shimmered across the pillars when tilted just right. Not dramatic machine doubling, the kind that appears flat and lifeless, but the subtle, shelf-like doubling associated with die errors. He grabbed a magnifier. The word "States" in United States of America showed unusual characteristics. The tops of the letters were doubled, slightly raised, as if stamped twice in misalignment. He compared it to other 2000 pennies. None shared this doubling. He checked the inscriptions: 1 cent, e pluribus unum. All exhibited faint but consistent doubling, especially the E and N in cent. That's when he realized what he might be holding: a double die reverse penny from 2000, an error coin that had been rumored but never officially catalogued. A ghost in the system, passed between millions of hands, unrecognized. Devin uploaded high-resolution images to an online coin forum, cautiously asking if the doubling seemed legitimate. The responses were immediate. At first, skeptical. Then excited. Several users referenced an old thread from 2009 where a collector had found a similar coin but was dismissed as imagining things. A few began examining their own 2000 pennies. One user in North Carolina uploaded photos of a coin with nearly identical features: doubling on "States," the odd spacing of the date, the missing clarity on "Liberty." The pattern was forming. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of something larger, something overlooked. Professional graders were contacted. Devin submitted his coin to a third-party grading service, expecting at most a novelty label. When it returned, the slab read, 2001 CDDO, double die obverse and reverse, MS64RD, unlisted error. The confirmation was electric. Not only had the doubling been validated, but both the obverse and reverse showed doubling, a rare trait even among known double die errors. This wasn't just a fluke, it was an undiscovered variety. The buzz among collectors was immediate. Only a few had surfaced, but each matched the same criteria. A subtle double die on both sides, particularly evident in "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and "States." The absence of a mint mark, the tight numeral spacing, the faint ghosting of certain letters. And most curiously, all of these coins came from pocket change, estate finds, or forgotten drawers, none directly from mint sets or proof rolls. This suggested that the error coins had circulated freely before anyone noticed. Early sales were quiet. One changed hands for $13,200 in a private collector group. Another was traded for a rare 1995 double die cent and $$2000 cash. But then, a graded MS65 example with rich red luster and prominent doubling came to auction. With only a handful known, speculation surged. The final hammer price stunned even seasoned numismatists, $19,500. Almost overnight, the 2000 double die penny became one of the most sought-after modern errors. Collectors scoured their collections. Dealers began weighing and inspecting 2000 pennies en masse. Some found fakes, coins with machine doubling, flattened letters, or altered details. But true examples remained scarce. Only a dozen verified pieces appeared over the next 2 years, and none exceeded MS-66 in grade. Each fetched a higher price than the last. One MS-64 brown sold for $12,000. Another in MS-65 red brought $26,000. Then, an unexpected twist surfaced from California. A retired bank manager presented a 2000 penny with all the expected doubling and spacing anomalies, but with an even more baffling feature. A dramatic die crack snaked across the reverse, splitting the Lincoln Memorial roofline like a lightning bolt. The coin had been struck on an already damaged die, making it a compound error. Graders authenticated it and labeled it double die obverse/reverse with die crack, MS-63 RB, unique. It sold privately to a Midwest collector for $48,000. From there, the legend only grew. A complete set of known 2000 double die cents, arranged by grade and provenance, was showcased at a national coin show in 2023. It drew crowds larger than those for older rarities. A bidding war erupted later that year over an MS-66 red specimen, the highest graded of its kind. It featured brilliant red toning, razor-sharp strike, and undeniable doubling on every key element. When the auction concluded, the coin had shattered expectations, selling for a jaw-dropping $115,000. And yet, the total number of confirmed examples remains astonishingly low. Most experts agree fewer than 20 genuine 2000 double die cents exist in high grade. Each one holds a trace of mystery, a reminder of how even in the precision-driven world of modern minting, imperfections slip through and transform into treasures. Devin, the young collector who unknowingly reignited the hunt, still keeps his original coin. It sits in a safe, not just as a valuable asset, but as the symbol of quiet persistence, of looking closer, of trusting curiosity. He remembers the moment he picked it up, the strange feeling it gave him, the invisible story waiting to be told in those small, doubled letters. A story that turned a penny into a prize worth anywhere from $40,000 to $115,000, and perhaps more, as time reveals just how rare it truly is. In 2005, the world moved fast. Technology advanced, communication evolved, and the hum of everyday life drowned out the quiet, unchanging rhythm of coins passing from pocket to hand, from store to register, from purse to jar. The Lincoln 1-cent coin, with its familiar copper tone and enduring design, remained unchanged. Its obverse still bore the proud profile of Abraham Lincoln, unchanged since Victor David Brenner first engraved it nearly a century earlier. The reverse, too, retained the Lincoln Memorial, a structure engraved into the collective American consciousness. At a glance, nothing about the 2005 Lincoln penny suggested it could be anything but ordinary. The United States Mint struck billions of them that year, more than 7 billion, to be exact. Produced in Philadelphia and Denver, with polished efficiency and unwavering consistency, the coins filled bank bags, circulated across the country, and vanished into the background noise of commerce. But hidden in that endless stream of copper-plated zinc coins was an accident. A mistake. A whisper in the noise. One that would take years to hear, and even longer to believe. In a quiet apartment in northern Minnesota, an amateur coin collector named Darrell Minton sat hunched over a folding table on a snowy evening in 2012. His tools were simple: a magnifying glass, a digital scale, and a desk lamp with a worn switch. Coin collecting had become his way to pass time after retirement, a calming ritual in a world that seemed to speed up without him. He had no great ambition, no search for treasure, just curiosity. And on that evening, curiosity led him to a coin that didn't quite make sense. It was a 2005 penny, struck in Philadelphia, with a bright red tone that gleamed under the light. He weighed it, 2.5 grams. Normal. He measured the diameter, 19 millimeters. Again, normal. But when he brought the magnifier closer to Lincoln's profile, he paused. The Liberty inscription looked unusual. Not blurred, but doubled. Almost as if another faint image of each letter hovered just behind the original. He blinked, adjusted his lens, and looked again. The doubling was real. It was especially prominent on the B and D. Then he moved his focus to "In God We Trust," where the tops of the letters displayed a similar effect. The T in "trust" appeared to split ever so slightly into two that he turned the coin over. The Lincoln Memorial appeared solid, until he noticed something strange near the base. A hairline die crack stretched across the steps, almost like a fracture in the stone. More importantly, the words "United States of America" showed the same doubling, subtle, sharp, shelf-like. Not the flattened appearance of machine doubling, but the crisp, layered style of a true double die. His pulse quickened. He rummaged through his guides and charts, flipping through descriptions of known varieties. But nothing about a 2005 double die cent matched what he saw. Most references focused on older, more well-known errors: 1955, 1972, 1995. But 2005? The books were silent. The coin, however, wasn't that he posted pictures online, careful to capture the doubling clearly. Responses poured in. Many doubted at first. Others urged him to send the coin to a professional grading service. He hesitated, then relented. Weeks passed. When the coin came back, the slab read, 2005 1C, double die obverse and reverse, MS65RD, unlisted variety. The grading company had confirmed what the books had missed. He had found something that wasn't supposed to exist. Collectors took notice. The forums buzzed. A few users shared images of similar coins they had previously dismissed. One user uploaded a photo of a 2005 penny with doubling on E pluribus unum and a die chip on the roof of the memorial. Another showed a coin with an obverse doubling on "In God We Trust" and a raised ridge running through Lincoln's hair. The pattern was emerging. These were not isolated defects. These were errors, minting anomalies with consistency, replicable features, and undeniable rarity. Word spread quietly but steadily. Error specialists began classifying the coin as an unlisted double die, distinct from machine doubling, with diagnostic markers that included strong obverse doubling, minor reverse doubling, and frequently, die cracks or chips on the memorial. Only a handful of these coins surfaced over the next 3 years. Each shared the same fingerprint: crisp doubling on inscriptions, clean fields, sharp lines. And each fetched more money than the last. The first verified sale of a graded MS64 example closed at $16,800. A few months later, an MS65 red sold privately for $12,000. By 2017, with only 10 authenticated examples known, the price jumped again, this time to $24,500 for a coin with impeccable luster and full strike. But as the population reports remained low, interest spiked. Then came an unexpected revelation. At a regional coin show in Oklahoma, a dealer presented a raw 2005 penny with all the characteristics of the rare double die, but with an added twist. A striking die clash had occurred, leaving the ghosted outline of Lincoln's profile etched faintly into the reverse field, just above the memorial. The clash was subtle, like a reflection in water, but clearly visible under magnification. Experts confirmed it was genuine, a result of the obverse and reverse dies striking each other without a planchet in place, leaving imprints behind. A clash on top of a double die. A compound error. The coin was slabbed, authenticated, and eventually sold at a silent auction for $4.49,000. After that, demand exploded. Collectors began scouring rolls, estate lots, and online auctions. But true examples remained elusive. The doubling was too crisp to fake, and grading services tightened authentication standards. Fewer than 20 known examples passed certification by 2020. And those that did, especially in higher mint state grades, were snapped up almost instantly. In 2021, a pristine MS66 red example went to public auction. It was flawless. Sharp edges. No discoloration. Bold doubling across the motto, date, and memorial inscriptions. Experts described it as the finest known. When the bidding ended, it had soared to an astonishing $106,000, setting the record for a modern Lincoln cent minted after the year 2000. Even today, the true number of 2005 double-die cents in circulation remains unknown. They are rarely spotted, often passed over, dismissed as damaged or worn. But the few that have been found tell a story. A story of mechanical imperfection in a digital age. A story of silence broken by observation. And a reminder that value doesn't always come from age or metal, but from rarity born in error. Darryl, now well into his retirement, still holds his original find. It sits in a case beside a handwritten note, "Look closely. Always look closely." He never sold it, though offers came often. For him, the value wasn't just in the money, but in the moment. The quiet realization. The discovery. The pause that changed everything, because that one penny, plucked from the noise of billions, is now worth anywhere between $32,000 and $106,000. And it's still out there, perhaps in a forgotten roll, a coffee can, or a dusty drawer, waiting for the next pair of eyes that will finally look closely enough. In 2010, a new chapter had already begun for the Lincoln 1-cent coin. Just a year earlier, the reverse of the penny had undergone a historic transformation. After nearly 5 decades of bearing the image of the Lincoln Memorial, the reverse design was retired, replaced by a fresh depiction, the Union Shield. It marked a subtle yet powerful shift in the nation's coinage, a new design, a new symbolism, and a new direction for the most familiar coin in America. Millions of these new Shield cents were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. They entered circulation almost immediately, blending in with their older predecessors, catching the public's eye only for a moment before disappearing into the everyday rhythm of commerce. But not all of them were made the same. Among the 2010 Lincoln Shield cents, a quiet mistake emerged. It wasn't loud. It wasn't instantly recognizable. But for those who knew what to look for, it became something extraordinary. Something that defied expectations. On a spring afternoon in 2016, in the small city of Wichita, Kansas, a young coin roll hunter named Lionel Green sat by his kitchen table with a stack of bank-wrapped penny rolls. He'd been collecting coins since he was a teenager, often searching through change for fun rather than profit. He wasn't a professional. Just curious. That curiosity had led him to hundreds of wheat pennies, a few off-center strikes, and the occasional Canadian cent. But on that day, something felt different. He opened a roll of 2010 cents and spread them across the table. Most were dull from years of circulation. But one coin stood out, not because it was shinier, but because it looked wrong. The obverse was clean, Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing right, "In God We Trust," arcing above, "Liberty" at the left, and the date 2010 resting near the rim. But something about the date caught his eye. The numbers weren't aligned quite right. The 0 looked compressed, and the 1 seemed doubled, faintly, but unmistakably. He tilted the coin under the light. There, just above Lincoln's shoulder, the "Liberty" inscription shimmered with the telltale sign of doubling. Not damage. Not post-mint abrasion. But true doubling, shelf-like, clear, and consistent. His heart raced. He flipped the coin over to inspect the Union Shield. The 13 vertical stripes were crisp, but as he examined the horizontal bar across the top, he noticed more doubling. The letters in "United States of America" appeared ghosted, with edges splitting ever so slightly into shadows of themselves. Lionel grabbed his scale. The coin weighed 2.5 grams, perfect for a copper-plated zinc penny. The diameter, thickness, and coloration were all correct. Yet the doubling was undeniable. It wasn't a trick of the light or a machine bounce. It was something real. Something deliberate. He searched his guides and databases. Nothing described this variety. No official listing. No mention of a 2010 double-die cent with both obverse and reverse doubling. He posted photos online, expecting skepticism. What he got instead was silence, then curiosity, then astonishment. Collectors and error specialists began chiming in. A few had seen similar coins, but never verified. A user from Ohio shared images of his own 2010 cent with slight doubling on the word trust. Another from Florida showed a reverse with doubling on e pluribus unum. Patterns started to emerge. All of the coins shared certain markers: date doubling, a distorted liberty, and unusual doubling along the shield's upper bar. Some even had small die chips in Lincoln's hair or along the shield's lower border. The consistency was too precise to ignore. Lionel submitted the coin for grading, uncertain of what the result would be. Weeks passed. When the coin returned, it was sealed in a protective slab with a bold label: 2010 1C, double die obverse and reverse, MS66RD, unlisted major variety. He stared at the label, stunned. It wasn't just an error. It was something new. Something that hadn't yet been documented in official guides. A discovery that rewrote a small part of modern coinage history. The response from the collecting world was swift and intense. A major dealer contacted Lionel within days, offering $14,000 for the coin. He declined. Offers continued to rise. $22,000. $28,000. Eventually, an error specialist from California made a private offer of $41,000. Lionel still refused to sell. The coin had become more than metal. It was a story, a mystery, a moment of unexpected wonder. Meanwhile, other examples trickled into view. A coin dealer in Colorado submitted a similar 2010 cent with strong reverse doubling, which later sold at auction for $36,000. Another collector presented a piece with intense obverse doubling, graded MS65 red, and it sold privately for $44,500. The rarity became apparent. No more than 15 authentic examples had been found, and among them, only a handful were in high mint state grades. Then, a twist emerged. A collector in New Jersey discovered a 2010 penny with not only the doubling on both sides, but a striking misalignment between the dies. The obverse was rotated slightly, causing Lincoln's portrait to tilt ever so subtly in relation to the reverse design. This rotation, combined with the doubling, created a spectacular visual anomaly. When graded and authenticated, the coin earned a label that read, 2010 1C, dual double die with die rotation, MS65RD, unique combination error. The coin was put up for auction and sold for $63,000, shattering expectations. As the years passed, the legend of the 2010 double die penny grew. More collectors began searching. A few more examples appeared, each pushing the boundaries of belief. In 2023, an MS67 red specimen, flawless in its luster, sharp in its strike, and showing textbook doubling, was sold through a national auction house. The bidding was fierce, with private collectors and institutions vying for ownership. When the hammer finally fell, the price reached an astonishing $98,000. Today, the 2010 double die penny remains one of the most elusive and enigmatic modern errors. It is not officially catalogued in every guide. It doesn't appear in the average collector's checklist. But for those who've seen it, held it, and understood its significance, it's undeniable. The doubling is real. The rarity is absolute. And the thrill of the find remains unmatched. Lionel still has his original coin, locked away, but often revisited. He sometimes thinks about the moment he spotted the unusual date, the flicker of light on doubled letters, the realization that something incredible had landed in his hand. He never planned to make history. But sometimes, history waits quietly, on a kitchen table, in an overlooked coin roll, in the smallest and most familiar places, and that 1 cent, once passed over without a second glance, now carries a value between $30,000 and $98,000. Waiting for the next collector to look just close enough.